Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at Hudson Institute for the launch of Rushan Abbas's book, Unbroken, One Uyghurs Fight for Freedom. I'm Olivia Enos, Senior Fellow here at Hudson, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the Hudson stage. Whether you're joining us virtually or online, we're grateful to have you here. In September 2018, long before I was working at Hudson, Rushan spoke out for the first time publicly in defense of the Uyghur people. It was a part of her brave journey to dedicate her life to the Uyghur cause. And it was also the unfortunate catalyst for the imprisonment of her dear sister, Gulshan Abbas. Imprisoned for Rushan's decision to exercise her protected rights and freedom in the US, and for no other reason, her unjust imprisonment stands as a stark reminder of the brutality and the evil nature of the CCP. We are here today to honor Rushan and to celebrate the release of her incredible book, which, by the way, everyone should grab their copy. They're available here for purchase today. I want to offer a hearty congratulations to you, Rushan, on this monumental achievement. I would be remiss, however, if I did not acknowledge the elephant in the room, that we are here today in no small part because of the CCP's continued unjust detention of your sister. So before we begin our event today, I want to address Gulshan and speak frankly to her CCP captors. Gulshan, I cannot wait until the day that you are free. I cannot wait to meet you in person, and even though we have never met before, I know a lot about you through your family members. I know that you are a resilient person because I know your daughter Ziba, who's here with us in the audience today. There is not a day that goes by that Ziba is not thinking of you, wanting to see you, wanting to be able to give you a hug, and for your granddaughter to be able to give you a hug. I know your kindness through meeting your brother Rashad, whose kind eyes and dedication to educating the next generation of Uyghurs is beyond admirable. And I know your strength through the tireless advocacy of your sister Rushan to defend you and the entire Uyghur people. One day, Gulshan, you and I will meet, and it will be the best day. To the CCP, I wish I didn't have to devote a single thought to you and your cruelty to the Uyghur people. Gulshan is one of millions of Uyghurs you subjugate through your ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity, forced labor, and myriad of other horrors. Mark my words, you will be held to account, and rest assured, not a day goes by that we will not call for Gulshan and other Uyghurs' ultimate release. So while Gulshan was detained after Rushan spoke here in 2018, we have hope that she can be released in 2025 due to Rushan's tireless advocacy here at Hudson and all across the globe. We will not be silent until she is free. Rushan, I think it's incredibly fitting that you chose Hudson as the place to launch your book. I am honored to have you here today, and we cannot wait to hear more about your life and your visionary work to defend the Uyghur people. So truly, thank you so much for this honor. It's now my pleasure to invite Representative Tom Swazi, co-chair of the Congressional Uyghur Caucus, to address our audience today. We'll be hearing from a couple of members of Congress, then we'll hear from the publisher, and after that, Rushan and Damon from the NED will also be joining us. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Representative Swazi to the stage.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you everyone who's here today. Rahmet, thank you so much, everyone. And Rushan Mubarak, let's give Rushan a round of applause, congratulate her. So much effort goes into writing a book, and a book as important as this is such a welcome addition to the academic scene, and we're so grateful to you for having put in so much effort, not only with this book, but your whole life that you've dedicated to the Uyghur people. And, you know, we all know about the Uyghurs in this room. Most people don't. I bring it up all the time when I'm at home, when I go to a party, a family party, or with just people I know or people I see in politics. Very few people know about the atrocities taking place with the Uyghur people. So we want to thank all of you for the good work that you're doing to try and bring attention to the plight of the Uyghurs. And we're especially grateful today to Rushan for her life's work, but also for writing this book. And we want to thank your publisher, I just saw him outside. Dean Baxtondale from Optimum Publishing. Let's give Dean a big round of applause. And Damon Wilson from the National Endowment for Democracy. Let's give him a big thank you also. And I don't know if the president of Hudson is here, John Walters, but we want to thank Hudson as well. Let's give John Walters a big thank you as well. So there's so much we have to do. One of the things that's a kind of a hot button topic right now is Radio Free Asia and the Uyghurs section. Rushan actually worked for them when she was much younger and first helped to highlight what was going on with the Uyghur people through Radio Free Asia. And it's one of the only sources of information in the Uyghur community throughout Asia. And it's also a great vehicle by which to discover some of the abuses that have been taking place and to chronicle them. So we really need to fight to keep Radio Free Asia and the Uyghur section going in the future. Because right now, just telling the truth. Think of what do we want to do here? We just want to tell the truth. We want to tell people what's actually happening. And anybody who hears the story of the Uyghur people, it's a shock to anyone's conscience. And so we need to tell that story, and that's one of the vehicles we need to communicate that to people. So I don't want to speak any longer other than to say that I've got a great friend and partner here as well, Young Kim, who's a great congresswoman we've done so many things together in a bipartisan fashion, and we're so fortunate to have her here today. Am I going to introduce her, or are you going to bring her up, Olivia? Okay, but let's hear it for Young Kim anyway. Wait a minute, let's hear it for Young Kim.
Thank you, Tom. Congressman Swazi and I, we have a lot of work that we have done, as you mentioned, in a bipartisan way. And events like today would not happen unless there was a bipartisan support on the halls of Congress to actually amplify the work that you're doing. So I do want to thank you for your bipartisan friendship and the work that we've been able to do. This is just the beginning. The struggles and the ongoing fight for bringing the dignity and the human rights to the Uyghur people in China that are living under the repressive authoritarian regime, obviously it needs to continue, and that needs to be brought to the front burner, and members from both sides of the aisle continuing to speak about it. So thank you again, and I promise you, you're going to have my continued commitment to be able to do that and continue to be your voice and champion, bring voice to the voiceless. That is very, very important. But I do also want to echo, congratulations to my dear friend, Rushan, for your tireless work, raising the issue and making sure that not just the members of Congress know about it, but educating the community about the ongoing struggles. And that is very, very important. I was working as a longtime congressional staff from the early 90s. And I've heard about this continuing struggle. And over time, I know there are members who have paid attention, but it hasn't received the type of attention that it deserves. So when I came back as an elected member in 2020, I made it as one of my foreign policy priorities to be able to continue to raise this issue and make sure that I can do something about it. So I was really glad that I can work on legislation that will spotlight the Uyghurs and the challenges that you face as we continue to speak about this issue. So again, I want to give a congrats and accolades to the publisher, to National Endowment. Thank you so much for your work. But more importantly, I want to thank the Hudson Institute for hosting today's event. As you mentioned, Olivia, it was several years ago when Rushan came over here and participated in a conversation to talk about this situation that it really became, I think, catalyst for members to continue to find other ways to raise this issue to the spotlight. And your continued advocacy has actually been able to make that happen. So again, I want to congratulate not only Rushan, but the Uyghur, population, everybody in this room that have made this possible. This book actually is shining a light on the resiliency and courage of the Uyghur people in the face of unimaginable hardship. It is a story of survival and an unwavering demand for justice and freedom for the Uyghur people. It's not just one voice, it's the community that are speaking out to find that freedom and the just for the people that do not deserve to be living under that oppressive regime. So under the Chinese Communist Party, Uyghurs and other ethnic communities have been victims for so long to genocide. This is the modern day concentration camps where Rushan's sister, Gulshan, is currently in detainment. Who knows what kind of conditions she's under. So we need to keep her in our thoughts, keep her in our prayers, and continue to lift her up as we do for all other Uyghurs that are under the similar situation. And they go through this hardship just simply because of their linguistic, cultural, and religious identities. So Rushan, you're right in saying that in your book that this is a brutal regime desperate to erase those who dare to speak out. And they're watching us. And I'm sure they're watching us right now as I'm speaking, as my colleague Tom Swazi is speaking, and every one of you that are speaking and attending this event, they're watching us. Who knows what will happen? But again, that should not intimidate us from further speaking out and continue to speak out, right? We become stronger in the face of adversity, in the face of challenges. You know, I'm one of those, when they give me a hard time, I become stronger and stronger. So we need to combine our efforts and voices to make our voices even louder, right? And it just doesn't end with the Uyghurs, what CCP is doing. We know that all around the world, Chinese Communist Party is censoring, coercing, gaslighting our friends, the Tibetans, the Falun Gong, and other ethnic and religious minorities. As chairwoman of the East Asia and the Pacific Subcommittee, and I also serve as a member of the Select Committee on a strategic competition between the United States and China, I'll never stop fighting for the voices of those oppressed by authoritarian regimes and for our like-minded partners who are subject to economic and military coercion. This afternoon, we're honoring you, Rushan, for your bravery, for using your voice and platform to inspire action and raise further awareness. So I want to thank you and Campaign for Uyghurs, those of you who are here, and all the other Uyghur advocates who have long fought for freedom and justice. And I want to end with one of my favorite quotes in your book, right here. In quote, "While my life has become a nonstop battle for justice, love remains that anchor that keeps me going. And your words actually keeps us going." We're going to keep going. It's like an engine. We're going to keep on oiling it. Keep on speaking up, make it run, make it run, make it turn, and we're going to keep on going with a stronger resolve. And we need more people like Rushan. We need more people like all of you here who demonstrate an unyielding love for your people, justice, truth, and freedom. So, Rushan, may your love for your sister and for the Uyghurs who are struggling and passion for the resilient Uyghur people continue to inspire us all and encourage real policy change that brings justice and truly hold the CCP accountable. We're going to continue to work on this legislation. We're going to make sure that Uyghur Policy Act is signed into law. Make sure we have a Uyghur Policy Special Coordinator at the State Department. I'm going to continue to bring this issue. I'm going to talk to the Secretary Rubio. We're not going to stop until what we are asking becomes a reality, right? So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, all of you, for fighting. Yeah, this is a time of celebration for the book. It's beautifully written, but this hopefully will be, the catalyst yet again for not just stopping. It's not just for the sake of writing it, right, Rushan? This is what we should be using as a textbook to really tell the story of those struggling. And hopefully this will be read widely, and hopefully every one of us here will walk away with a book, and hopefully we'll be able to pay for it, so we'll have some additional funds to keep the fight going. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Representative Young Kim. Your leadership throughout the House is just so greatly appreciated. I know how passionate you are about these issues and about human rights in Asia generally, so thank you so much for that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dean Baxendale, who is the publisher of Rushan's book, to offer some opening remarks. All of our speakers have incredibly illustrious backgrounds and bios. I hope everyone will take the time to read them, but for the purposes of this time, I'm going to make it brief. Dean Baxendale is the CEO of Optimum Publishing International and the China Democracy Fund, and we are delighted to have him with us today. So thank you so much, Dean, for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back in Washington. It's with distinct pleasure that I'm here today, again, standing here in Washington, talking about issues that mean a lot to me and mean a lot to everybody in this room. So, first of all, I just want to thank our distinguished members of Congress, all the human rights advocates here, and our fellow defenders of freedom. It's great, as I said, to be in DC. I have so many friends and colleagues now, I actually think it's becoming my first home. Some of you who see me here a lot probably say, oh, no, I don't know about that, Dean. You should stay in Toronto. But I love coming here to DC. I'd like to thank the Hudson Institute, Ken Weinstein, for sponsoring this event, as well as our distinguished panel host, Olivia Enos. I would also like to thank Damon Wilson from the NED, who has also supported 3 book launches for Optimum Publishing over the past few years. So again, thank you for your support at NED, Damon, and thank you for being a friend. I would also like to thank our editors, Moira Brown, as well as Sabrina Soleil, for their devotion to this project. It's a journey to write a book and being brave enough to pour your heart and soul into it, but it often requires sometimes a little instructive hand to get it over the finish line. And that's why we have editors. But that is why we publish, to get the most out of our authors so that they can bring their stories to you on the pages of a book and resonate with you. Optimum Publishing International has a 50-year track record of speaking truth to power. Today, we do not merely launch a book, we raise a beacon. Unbroken, One Uyghur's Fight for Freedom, is more than a memoir. It is a living indictment of authoritarian repression, a tribute to unyielding courage, and a call to action for the free world that we must all answer. Rushan's story is not hers alone. It's an echo of millions. The Tibetans silenced in monasteries and in their homeland, the Uyghurs erased in camps, and all the peoples whose spiritual, cultural, and personal identities are systematically extinguished beneath the iron hand of the Chinese Communist Party. As publishers, we stand here not just to launch a book, but to defend the freedoms it represents: free speech, self-determination, and sacred right to truth. These are not luxuries in the West. They are our shared inheritance for all of humanity. This book begins where the world has too often turned away. It chronicles how the CCP first hijacked Tibetan Buddhism through the covert mechanisms of the United Front Department, a bureaucratic arm that manipulates spiritual identities and co-opts traditional leaders to legitimize the regime's control. And in some cases, as you know, they kidnap and sometimes murder spiritual leaders who they are afraid of. And then the grotesque repetition, it turned its full machinery on the Uyghur economic people, an ethnic and religious cleansing project that the CCP represents, and they represent it as economic human rights. But even the UN cannot ignore the truth. As Bachelet's report states, crimes against humanity. That's the least we could have come up with. And yet little action by global business and political leaders, except here in the US, is taking place. The story of Unbroken is one of profound personal loss. It tells how Rushan Abbas, speaking freely from the United States, saw her sister, Dr. Rushan Abbas, a retired medical professional, disappear into the black hole of China's detention system, just days after she appeared right here on the panel at Hudson, as you've heard. Let that sink in for a moment. Exercising free speech and our right to be free. This kind of transnational repression is the new frontier of authoritarianism. We are no longer speaking of political prisoners in distant provinces. We are speaking of Canadian citizens, of American citizens, of global citizens, whose relatives are held hostage. And how the CCP's tentacles stretch into our schools, our politics, our religious institutions, and most of the time, we don't even know what's happening. As we gather here, not merely as publishers, legislators, and readers, but as guardians of civilization's hard-won principles, with members of Congress present, Tom Swazi, Young Kim, and Joe Wilson, who I believe will be joining us, we are reminded that bipartisanship still lives in the defense of truth and human dignity. We must now ask ourselves difficult questions here in Congress, in Parliament in Canada, and around the world. How long will democracies conduct business with regimes committing genocide? How long will we remain silent when economic interests muzzle our values? And how long before the CCP's playbook of control through fear, technology, and propaganda becomes the model for authoritarian aspirants around the globe? We're already starting to see this happen. In Unbroken, Rushan writes, if we do not use our voice to stand up for human rights today, the only voice left for us tomorrow will be the voice of regret. Let us heed that warning. Let us honor the memory of Tibetan monks who burned themselves alive rather than bow to tyranny. Let us stand beside the Uyghur mothers forced to abort their unborn children for the crime of their ethnicity. Let us give meaning to the pain that this book so beautifully, devastatingly reveals, but also the hope that Rushan brings to the Uyghur people and to all of humanity. Optimum Publishing publishes books not only to inform, but to resist. We believe in the facts over fear, encourage over comfort, and in the power of narrative to outlast repression. To Rushan, your story is one of incandescent bravery. You've turned personal agony into global advocacy, and we are honored to be your publisher, be your partner, and to help lift your voice. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you for being here today and listening to all of the Congress people that are here and also to the panel that's coming up. We really appreciate your support, so thank you.
And it's now my pleasure to invite our final congressperson up to the stage. Thank you, Representative Joe Wilson, Chairman of the Bicameral Helsinki Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the stage now. Thank you for coming to Hudson.
Gosh, and ladies and gentlemen, it's such an honor to be here with you and to be here with inspired the moment I got off the elevator to see the flags of America with the courageous democracies of Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. If you know you're in the right place. And of course, I know I'm in the right place too because I'm here with Young Kim. And I'm so grateful. I'm very grateful her chairmanship of the Asia Subcommittee of the Foreign Affairs Committee, how able she is and how dynamic, and so I'm just grateful to be here with her. And then as I think of the Hudson Institute, I want to thank you for your stand for freedom and against the Chinese Communist Party, the foremost threat to freedom across the world. I'm grateful to be back and to be with Rushan Abbas. Additionally, the Hudson Institute, I was really grateful over the weekend to be with former governor, ambassador, first female governor in 340 years in South Carolina, Nikki Haley, and then my colleague, Mike Gallagher. So, hey, there are a lot of superstars here, so I'm grateful. And congratulations, Rushan, on your book. And hey, the Dalai Lama's comments right on the cover, you can't miss. This is an extraordinary book, so thank you. And we pray for the day your sister, who was unjustly detained by the Chinese Communist Party, can be released and back with her loved ones. The Chinese Communist Party is committing genocide against the Uyghur Muslim population. And I am especially impacted by the terrible acts of aggression by the Chinese Communist Party, which I differentiate from the people of China itself. I was born with an appreciation of the Chinese people in that my father in World War II served in the Flying Tigers in Kunming, Chengdu, and Xi'an. And he liberated China, helped liberate China, the people that he loved, and meant for the country to be free and dynamic and not what, sadly, it is today. On January 13th, 2021, I was grateful to have joined with Congressman Jim Banks, and now a very distinguished U.S. Senator of Indiana, as the first members of Congress to call upon the government to declare the Chinese Communist Party crimes against the Uyghur population a genocide. Only a week later, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a real American patriot, did the right thing and also declared it a genocide. The Chinese Communist Party believes it can wipe out the Uyghur Muslim population through slave labor, forced sterilization, and mass detention camps. We are facing a global conflict we did not choose between democracies led by rule of law and invaded by dictatorships which are ruled by gun. The Chinese Communist Party is a central part of that axis, along with the co-conspirators of war criminal Putin and the regime in Tehran. It is the Chinese Communist Party which serves as the bank funding the Ayatollah in Iran, who is developing and providing drones to war criminal Putin to use in his mass murder against Ukraine. It is the Chinese Communist Party that is watching what is going on in Ukraine and also in the Middle East as it threatens the people of Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party, through the United Front Work Department, works every day toward taking down democracies in so many different bizarre ways and making supreme the goal of world communism. Democracies must stick together and hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable for its crimes. It's important that we continue to stand up to put pressure on the Chinese Communist Party for its genocide. President Donald Trump has done this through imposing tough tariffs on China to bring them to the table to negotiate. President Trump is also rebuilding our military to stand up to Communist Party aggression to truly achieve peace through strength. That is so critical as we learn from the success of President Ronald Reagan. The Chinese Communist Party is afraid of freedom. It's important to continue to support the Uyghur Service to Radio Free Asia and their important efforts to get the truth to the people within China. It's important to reform and enhance the international broadcasting efforts funded by taxpayers and cut those services that may be counterproductive. I was grateful to lead an effort in the House Foreign Affairs Committee a few years ago to prohibit the U.S. Agency for Global Media to provide an open platform for the Chinese Communist Party. At the same time, in a world where China spends more on propaganda than the entire budget of the State Department, America must continue to support the efforts of those of Radio Free Asia, the National Endowment for Democracy, and others which are countering the malign agenda of the Chinese Communist Party. Thank you again, Rushan, for your courage and capabilities and competence. And additionally, the Uyghur American community is an essential part of the fabric of the United States. Uyghurs are also a key pillar of the American Muslim community, which has had so many successes and positive benefits to the people of America. I appreciate all that you do, and I want to wish you continued success, and I want to wish Hudson continued success. Hey, again, I have to tell you, as I see the flags indeed, the United States, with our courageous democracies that are facing unprecedented challenges with Israel, the nuclear capability that must be stopped by Tehran, the courage of the people of Ukraine, President Zelensky. What an incredible weekend. Okay, who would ever imagine that Soviet nuclear bombers would be destroyed in such a magnitude? 34% of all of the aircraft of the Russian dictatorship or Putin dictatorship have been destroyed. And just amazing. And again, the courage of the people of Taiwan should always be in place. And we need to be, and we are. I was with Lockheed Martin as the F-16s, Block 10 were provided to Taiwan. And again, it's back again, peace through strength. The stronger our allies are, and the stronger America is, the less likely of a conflict. And then even better with the young people here. When I was your age, we were facing Soviet communism and the Communist International, and the perception was that it could never go away. Well, it did, and it collapsed, because totalitarianism ultimately will collapse with the strength of the American people and our allies across the world. Thank you. I'm grateful to be with you today. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to Representative Wilson for joining us here today. We so appreciate your leadership and are grateful for your support for Rushan and for the Uyghur people. So thank you so much for being here today. We're now going to begin our panel. I know this is the moment everyone has been so excited for, to get to talk with you, Rushan, and also to talk with you, Damon. I want to very quickly just make sure everybody knows who everybody is. Rushan is the executive director and founder of Campaign for Uyghurs, and also the newest author of Unbroken, When Uyghurs Fight for Freedom. And Damon is president and CEO of the National Endowment for Democracy, an independent nonprofit grant-making foundation supporting freedom all across the globe. And we're just so grateful to have both of you here today. Rushan, I wanted to congratulate you again on publishing a book. I've heard from different people describe publishing a book as very similar to birthing a baby, which you have done several times. And so I know that it's quite a feat to be able to be here and to have this book in your hands, physically holding on to it. And I know for me, I've known you for years, but this book really gave a window into who you are and what inspires you and what has made you so successful in campaigning for the Uyghur cause. So I hope that our entire audience gets a sense for what this incredible book has to offer. And so without further ado, Rushan, I want to ask you, what inspired you to write this book? And more specifically, what does the title Unbroken mean to you?
Thank you so much, Olivia, and thank you all. I'm so excited to be with all of you, and I see my friend Sophie flying back from Canada, changing her flight arrangements, and everyone, actually, I'm just overwhelmed. Thank you. So let me start with the title, Unbroken. As we all know, last 8-10 years, the Uyghurs are facing full-fledged active genocide. Every one of us, our hearts are broken. We are living with our family members being hostage taken, and the innocent people by the millions disappearing into the concentration camps, prisons, and the forced labor facilities. Yet you see so many heroes here from the Uyghur community. See Alfidar, who's leading the Uyghur community in the United States, and Umar Kanat, my colleague for a long time, and many, many others. And not just the Uyghurs, but so many allies here. Everybody is fighting against this genocide. For the Uyghurs, we might be with broken-hearted, but unbroken spirit, will, and the hope that we will continue to fight. And why I wrote the book, there are so many stories of the Uyghur people, including my own family. This book is actually combined stories from the 3 generations. My grandpa's times, which our people fought for the freedom of East Turkestan in the 40s to establish independent country. And then my grandpa was in jail for 3 years and faced really harsh torture. And then my parents' times during the Cultural Revolution, all the intellectuals, not just Uyghurs, but all in China, subject to persecution. And I did have some of the actual handwritten script of my father, who wrote about his times in the Cultural Revolution, which is time I was born in 1967. And then now, everything what's happening, while the Chinese government spreading so much disinformation and the false narratives and writing the history completely differently. And I thought that I will write this to tell my side of the story and to tell the Uyghur side of the story and the truth.
Rushan, I think it's incredible that you're carrying on in so many ways a family legacy of like speaking out and bravery. And I think it's incredible that you have your father's handwritten words in part to inspire your work today. Rushan, I know that you endured immense hardship following your university graduation. You faced government retaliation for your involvement in the student demonstrations in the late 1980s, and then again in the early 90s when you started your advocacy in the US. And your father also faced retaliation. Most recently, and I think almost everyone has acknowledged when you spoke out at Hudson, it had very direct implications for your sister, Gulshan. This is not an easy life. So through all of it, how have you found the strength to speak out and to be courageous in the midst of all of this?
From the very young age, I was lucky to spend a lot of time with my parents, since I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and my older 2 brothers and my sister, they were all much older than me. The age difference between them is 2 years, and between me and my sister is like 5 years. So they used to stick together, the 3 of them, when we were growing up, and I was always with my parents. And through that, I heard a lot about who the Uyghurs are, what happened to us, what happened with this occupation, and all the persecutions. And I want to recognize my friend Medanai. Her father was one of the Uyghur scholar, and also my teacher. And the Alfidar and the Alnigar's father, Abdikim Baki, was my teacher when I was in high school. Both these people left really strong impact on me when I was growing up. So when they took my sister, the Chinese government undermined one thing, which they never understand, the power of love. The love I have for my sister, love I have for my people, my country, and the love I have for the freedom and democracy. I came to the United States 36 years ago without speaking much English at all, without knowing anybody, with a handful of Uyghur people, which I didn't know any one of them, because I was looking for something which we did not have back home, the freedom and democracy. That's being at stake right now, not just for the people within China's borders, Tibetans and the Hong Kongers, and then the Chinese democratic movement, the members of the Chinese democratic movements, or now Taiwan, but Chinese government is being threat for all humanity, future of the world, the freedom and democracy we all cherish. And that's what keeps me going.
It's very inspirational, and I think it's really wonderful to hear how the love for your family has inspired you, but also your love for freedom and a care for that. I think that's a really good segue over to bring you in here, Damon. Can you speak to some of the themes in Unbroken that really stood out to you?
Thank you so much, Olivia, for having us. Rushan, congratulations. This is a beautiful feat, a painful feat, a beautiful feat. I do want to thank Hudson for bringing us back to what is a painful but also empowering moment for you to reclaim this stage and tell the story, your family's story, where 6 days after speaking here on this stage, the phones went silent and hope became a certainty of your sister's detainment. We're really grateful for everything that has produced this book. It's partly why we just had Representative Young Kim, Joe Wilson, Congressman Swazi. Leaders across the world didn't know the story. They didn't know the Uyghur story until people like you, Rushan, shared your own story. And so you just said the power of love. I mean, what we've watched is one of the most powerful, centralizing, controlling governments on earth, the CCP, try to take on, as you said, love, family, faith, freedom. These are unstoppable forces, and they're represented by Rushan and so many in the Uyghur community that have spoken out. Dean referred to this book as a living indictment. But what you do, Rushan, with this is you take a personal witness to injustice through your eyes, through Gulshan's experience, through the experience of your father, through the stories you share of his experience in the Cultural Revolution, and you bring it home to your son, Ronnie, today and the challenges that you've had with his striving for dignity. You take this personal witness to injustice and you marry it with what you have done so well, a global rallying cry for solidarity, which is why all of us are here. We are only here to support you. So Olivia, to come back to your point, I mean, for me, this book is about taking the personal stories of individual resilience up against this behemoth of systemic oppression, the David versus Goliath, and watching this incredible story unfold. It does give us insight into what we're dealing with. We've seen authoritarian regimes not just go after dissidents, they punish families. They look for leverage over and hold accountable. We have others here who have family members that are imprisoned right now. And your sister, with no political involvement, was disappeared in retaliation for your speaking out. And the message Beijing was sending was clear. You speak out and your loved ones will suffer. So I think that's one really important lesson, is that we understand how they're thinking and their tactics. But second, we've also seen through your story here that compliance does not mean protection. You've talked about Gulshan and other family members who were fluent in Chinese, Mandarin, they were apolitical, they were assimilated, making real contributions to their community. It was Uyghur identity that was criminalized, and you've helped underscore that it doesn't matter what your behavior is. It's not behavior that's being targeted, it's existence, it's identity. And that is reprehensible, and you really help people see that. And I'd say the final thing for all of us is to understand, is Rushan has lived, is that silence can enable this cruelty. And you have shown that, you know, the Uyghur people and your recounting of this have faced decades of repression. I mean, you've traced it back in an intergenerational struggle to your grandparents. But we saw only when really women began to mobilize around the world, the 18 cities with the campaign to bring out One Voice, One Step. That's when global media began to take notice. That's when TV cameras started to show up. That's when politicians started to say, hey, what's going on? And it's a reminder for all of us that that sense of delay has a cost, and the cost are human lives. And this book, while it's dealing with an ongoing issue, it's a reminder of us of the urgency of this moment right now. Well done, Rushan. I know this wasn't easy. You've done a service not just for your family, for your sister, but for everybody that cares about the future of freedom. You've given us a call to action.
Yeah, I could not have put it better myself, Damon. I think especially your words about being brave, being courageous, speaking up when we see things going wrong. There's a need to not pause, to say, okay, we know what's right, we know what's wrong, time to speak now. So thank you. I think that's a great reminder. I know I'm very grateful, Hudson is very grateful for the NED's leadership in so many ways. The NED is devoted, of course, to defending good governance, democracy, and human rights wherever they are under threat. So can you speak to some of the ways that the NED equips advocates like Rushan and others to effectively generate momentum around issues like the Uyghur cause?
Sure. All right. The first time that most Americans ever heard of the Uyghur community, of a Uyghur, would have been in the context of CCP propaganda. These are our Muslim terrorists. Americans understand 9/11. You understand terrorism. These are our Muslim terrorists. And this was really a framework in which the CCP was trying to present the story, present the case to the world. And so if you think about what we were built to do at the endowment was to see through this and understand, to find the best and those who are fighting for fundamental freedoms, and just stand with them with modest support in a way that is the National Endowment for Democracy represents the American people standing by those who seek freedom around the world. So I think I've got my colleagues, my team members here. In 2004, the endowment, so over 20 years ago, the endowment started making its first grants and support, but it wasn't about monetary support. It's pretty modest monetary support. It was about the moral support. It was about the listening. It was about understanding. It was about building a relationship of trust to understand how do you actually take a very egregious issue that's being totally characterized in the global awareness in a different kind of way and give voice to Uyghurs themselves to tell that story. And so that's the kind of approach, Olivia, that the endowment takes. It's not our story. It's not the American people's story. It's not Ned's story. But it is about how we can help find the most amazing people, the most effective folks, and give them lift, amplify their voices, give them oxygen. And as they succeed, it's actually quite good for the American people as well. So the lessons that we take away from this as a foundation, we really put an emphasis on the ground game, supporting those who live inside countries, their work on the ground. But in situations like this, you have got to support diaspora-led movements that can become a bridge between local pain and local repression and that sense of global power. And that's what you've done, Rushan, with you and your colleagues. You have built a movement that has given them voice and power. Second is that we do have to, I think, name and confront this sense of transnational repression. For a long time, you would talk to our Uyghur friends who would say, you got to be careful about going to this restaurant. I had problems here. Like in the community, they would share tips about where they were being targeted in free societies. And we hadn't processed as Americans, as folks in free society, as the FBI, as law enforcement, that this isn't just minor harassment that doesn't merit opening up a criminal case. This is intentional, strategic intimidation and coercion of people in free societies. It's the long reach of the arm of a CCP to silence folks in freedom. That is so offensive, not just to the Uyghur community, it's offensive to Americans. And I think calling that out, naming it, confronting it, and understanding this is not a Uyghur problem when they're out in a small community being intimidated. It is how do we protect the freedoms in our own society. And finally, I would say part of what Congressman Swazi was saying, your storytelling, it's painful to open up your life, to tell the stories. Many of our colleagues that we talk to want to do that privately. They don't want to share publicly, whether for retribution, for their own sense of personal dignity. You have been brave. Storytelling is an act of resistance and an act of resilience. And it's also an incredibly effective way of building that community of support to give your community more, the broader support it needs from allies around the world, which is part of what some of you in this room are trying to do to expand that community of support. So those are some of the ways that we try to think about how to support voices like Rushan, but to be honest, they do all the work. We have the privilege of saying, wow, can we have the honor of providing some modest support for this effort?
Yeah, I love that the NED is so focused on equipping other people to drive forward the messages that are so important to them and so important to freedom. So therefore, it's important to all of us. So Rushan, can you speak a little bit to the origin story of Campaign for Uyghurs? What are you most proud of? Are there things that you would have done differently? And what's your hope for the future?
Thank you. When this mass detention started, especially with over 1 million in early 2017. We were not getting enough attention, as Damon mentioned. Media, the lawmakers, governments, leaders, and even human rights entities and the Human Rights Watch did some reports, and the other organizations tried to highlight, but it was getting covered with everything else is going on. So we thought we can establish an organization and they try to mobilize grassroots organizations and movements, and they bring the local people to speak about the Uyghurs. And so we established Campaign for Uyghurs in September 2017. I was still working full-time, and my husband too, so we tried to just tried to run the organization. And then we did the One Voice, One Step protest. I want to recognize a few the leaders here, Zubaira and Alfidar and Shahrazad. Those are all the original pioneers who led with many other Uyghur youth here. So we did that, and then we tried to start to get attention. But again, in September 2018, when I was invited by my dear friend Luisa Griva to join the panel here at Hudson, I was speaking exactly the same way, sitting here and talking. I took a lunch break, actually, from my regular job. Yeah. I was working as an international business development person for an architectural firm, and our office was just a few blocks from here. So I told my boss, I'm going to be gone for 2 hours. I'm speaking about this atrocity about my people. So I came here and spoke, went back to work. But 5 days later, basically, my life was being, completely changed. And I did that for about a year because I couldn't quit my job. That was the main, support that I can pay mortgage and I can pay my expenses and I can pay for my trips to advocate and speak for my sister and others. Only because of their support, when we start to receive a grant in October 2019, I was able to quit my job and become a full-time activist. So through Campaign for Uyghurs, we produced the first Uyghur genocide report in early 2020, right before the pandemic. We published that in so many different languages, translated to, it was in English originally produced, and Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, even Spanish, Turkish. So we had that, sent it out to so many different organizations and the global leaders. And so those are the kind of things that we were doing other than organizing advocacy training workshops. And we have so many leaders joined the cause right now through the art training that I recognize. I was in Europe last week in Munich attending the Uyghur Summit, and I see so many people there who went through our original training in 2021, 2022. I see them becoming leaders in the movement, so I'm very proud of all this. Anything that we could have done differently? If NET had more money, if they have given us more money, we could have done a lot more.
You're talking to your members of Congress.
That's great. Thank you, Rushan. So, Damon, you've spent your career working at the intersection of diplomacy, strategic policy, and the global fight for human rights and democracy. And of course, the NED has been a steadfast supporter of the Uyghur cause, as we've heard from Rushan and from yourself. How do you see the issue of China's transnational repression, which I know you touched on a little bit in your last comments, affecting not just Uyghur activists, but democracy advocates broadly? Like, how is it shaping the landscape?
I think it's one of the fundamental trends that is, so we're about to roll out, in fact, we're workshopping this with the NED family, a new 5-year strategy for the endowment, but it's really a strategy for empowering freedom around the world in this moment. And part of what we all understand is it's a moment for democracy and democratic recession around the world, and we feel that. But what we really need to understand is it's coming with two dramatically different things in historically speaking for the movement of freedom. And one is the authoritarian assault with an intentional, sophisticated strategy to undermine democracy and rule of law. And the second is coupled with, we're living through the most rapid set of changes that humanity has ever experienced. The pace of change driven by technological innovation brings magnificent tools for activists and these movements, but you bring this together, and this is not a democratic recession, this is the assault on democracy and freedom globally. And the CCP is on the cutting edge of both of these, the technological revolution and the effort to undermine freedom. And what I find one of the most egregious aspects about this period is that the level of ambition has gone from not just being content with repression at home, as you have been able to tell that story, as your family has experienced, but it has become a conclusion that we can only be safe at home if we export the tools, tactics, and technologies of repression around the world. Because where democracy thrives, it actually is fueling something that can be existentially challenging to a regime like the CCP. And so that has produced a relatively, it's not a new phenomenon, but when we think of and call a new phenomenon of transnational repression that I was talking about, where we saw the audacity of the CCP open effectively a police station in Manhattan. A police station in Manhattan that was used and staffed to be able to intimidate and target, coerce, whether they are folks who might have been studying in the United States, maybe they are US citizens, to coerce them into silence and intimidation. And one of the small, modest grants we've made to a partner has demonstrated this isn't just a one-off. I think we now have 102 documented CCP police stations around the world that activists have been able to document. And so if free societies don't wake up, that what we take for granted, that we understand if you're living in East Turkestan, if you're living in the Uyghur region, you can't live in freedom. Well, if you're a Uyghur living in Europe and the United States and Turkey and you can't live in freedom, what does that say about what we're doing? And so I think this is a particularly pernicious force because there is an interplay between the ground game, those incredibly courageous activists who risk a lot on the ground every day, little cracks, little efforts of resistance. And there's a connection between them and the international advocacy, the people that have the access, the voice to testify before European Parliament, before US Congress. And to be able to use technology to really crush and try to repress and survey, raise the cost internally, and at the same time use new tactics and tools to raise the costs of doing that in free societies, this is a recipe for actually protecting the vulnerabilities of authoritarian regimes. And so I think it's an urgent moment for us, for freedom-loving people, to understand this is not a passive sport. This is an active play, and it's not just about what's happening to Uyghurs in Western China, which is where first and foremost is most painfully felt, but it's ensuring that those around the world are able to do their advocacy unmolested in that cause. This is why we have very remarkable Uyghur activists in the community, some who are with us, who are going to other countries around the world where the CCP has used geopolitics to try to get a lock on Muslim majority countries around the world where it's even hard to talk about this. If you use DeepSeek, the AI being developed in China, you're not going to learn about these issues, which is why the way we support large language models, not just coming out of Silicon Valley, but large language models coming out of the Tibetan community, are critical ways to ensure access to information that doesn't allow the CCP to banish the story.
I love your point, Damon, that democracy and freedom and human rights pose an existential threat to authoritarianism. I think that is such a apt point. And when you were saying it, I feel like in so many ways when you're promoting good governance, when you're promoting democracy, you're almost like shining a spotlight on all of the cracks that exist in an authoritarian government context. And it just reminded me of this verse. I'm totally going to butcher it in the Bible, but it's like, you shine a light in the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it. And I think that's a lot of what the work is that we're doing day in and day out when we think about advocating for freedom and for human rights. Rushan, and I know Dean actually already raised this quote because this is such a powerful quote from your book. But in the book's introduction, you say, "As I often say to world leaders in my advocacy, if we do not use our voice to stand up for human rights today, the only voice left to us tomorrow will be the voice of regret." This seems an incredibly, incredibly apt reminder amidst ongoing Uyghur genocide and crimes against humanity, and amidst our current political climate even. So can you each share about some ways audience members can and should be raising their voices in defense of the Uyghur people and of human rights generally? Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, why the CCP is afraid of the Uyghur activists or any Uyghur voice, because they want to keep all of us quiet so they can continue with their goal to not just erase the Uyghur culture and the Uyghur population and the holding anybody who speak out in prison. I want to recognize my friend Sophie Yan. Also, her husband is in jail that she's fighting, and my friends in Tibetan community and the Hong Kong. But also, they are going to, impact the world, future of the entire world. So all of us here today, or the people who are in this space today, we are all responsible for what happens next. Silence is the oxygen of tyranny. So we need to unplug that lifeline. We need to continue to speak out. For the Uyghurs, we are speaking out at the cost of our loved ones, our family members' freedom. So we need everyone else's voice. We need the people and the allies to provide us the platforms, amplify our voices so we can win over this dark shadow over democracy.
Well, I would say if you want to make a contribution to the cause, figure out how to invite Rushan to come speak at your organization, community groups, to get the story out there. But more seriously, we do need continuous investment in research and evidence-based arguments. And so we needed the initial reports that started to document and assert that this should be considered a genocide. We needed the work that documented, from Adrian to the Uyghur Justice Project, those that began to document the camps themselves and be able to map and show people that. When Tibet Action Institute came out with the report on colonial boarding schools, it allowed for another cycle of news coverage, reports, congressional testimony. We need data, evidence, continuous research to build the case. And as we're doing this, we need to expand and have more allies. We need to invite, not alienate people because they don't understand, they're not part of it, not to shame them, but to invite them into the cause. And we need new audiences, both here in the United States, members on Capitol Hill, more broadly in the public, in the Muslim majority countries where we've got advocacy efforts underway. We need to reach new audiences with the compelling information to help chip away at what is an effort to be an information blockade on what is happening to the Uyghur people. And then I think there are ways that individuals could get involved with talking to their members of Congress, putting pressure on the government. We've got sanctions. We have a Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. These come down sometimes to implementation. How are we executing this? What does this mean? How do you engage with companies? When we get a legislative win, it's a huge deal, but it actually just starts a process. And so I think a lot of you have the ability to contribute to rules, regulations, to contribute as people are developing the case for how to use some of the existing tools and instruments we have to go after accountability, and where there are gaps in that accountability network that need to be closed. Ultimately coming back, what we have found is that it's most effective, as you see, when those who are on the pointy edge of the spear, who have been affected directly, when they are able to have their voice with the public, with members of Congress, they are able to help, I think, mobilize people into action. And so giving more platforms for this book launch, hosting small group conversations of it, and helping people understand what this really means to brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. I think that's a really personal contribution people can make.
Yeah, I'm excited, Rushan, to see how your book does generate more momentum around the Uyghur cause generally. This is my final question, but audience members, you've been put on notice because we're going to open it up for Q&A after this question. But Damon and Rushan, Unbroken is being published at a time where the plight of the Uyghurs and other human rights issues are honestly receiving relatively short shrift. What can we learn from Unbroken specifically on the best ways, whether it's tactics or otherwise, to bring these issues really to the fore?
Nobody should undermine the individual power. There is a documentary called In Search of My Sister, which the whole documentary actually brought to life because of one person, one teenage girl. So she learned something at school. When she was in high school, came and asked her father to do something. And here we have this film that we screened in more than 40 countries. So just anything that, gives us the power to tell the stories of our families, our friends, what's happening to our people, continuously talk about that. That's going to build the movement, and also working with lawmakers and their offices, keep pushing the legislations and also implementation of these. So we have a lot of work to do. This is just the beginning, because the genocide is still happening. And still, when we travel around the world, we see 90% of the people still don't know anything about the Uyghurs, even in the United States. So we have to keep educating the general public. We have to keep asking general public to contact their politicians and lawmakers. So all I hope is everybody's steps count, and they build the movement to do something, to build a better world for our next generations. Because if we don't stop CCP right now, then it will be our children and our grandchildren who will pay the consequences of an illiberal, dark world. Our today will be the future for the world.
Yeah. I'd just quickly add, Rushan, Rushan was leaning into the agency of individuals, the power of individuals, and that's what I take from Unbroken. It's the title, Unbroken. You began your talk up here, Rushan, by talking about love for family, and you think about love, family, faith, freedom. This is about the power of what burns inside people in a way that is irrepressible. You think of who you are and what you care about. You think about the tank man in Tiananmen. Freedom is a winner because it doesn't depend on other stuff. It's about people's own desire for dignity for their family. And so I think as we can become overwhelmed by the power of authoritarian states, as Xi Jinping perfects a censorship algorithm, we just need to understand that sense of agency of people who are driven for a sense of dignity, and to be able to harness that. I think for those of us here in this room and in this town, it also comes back to us in this moment of challenge for freedom and democracy. We've got a bit of a debate in our country right now about what is our role in this space. And it's in play right now. It's in play right now as things will be playing out in debates in Congress, back and forth between executive, legislative, and the public domain. Do we want vehicles and mechanisms through which the American people can demonstrate that they stand by those who seek freedom around the world? Not in some imperialistic way to impose our values or our sense of what's right and wrong or how to do this, and not even in a sense of hangover from empire where we're trying to do it. This is actually a really smart way of figuring out, can we just help identify the most remarkable people, ideas, and just say, rather than turn our back on you, on the cause, just say, we're with you. We're with you. I think that's probably where most Americans are. This doesn't take a gargantuan effort. but it does take a bit of an effort and intentionality. And I think that's a little bit in debate right now. And I have confidence that that's where the center of gravity would be for most Americans when they hear your story, Rushan, when they understand your sister. They don't really want to turn their back on it, but we should stick with you. I think that's what we need to speak up for.
Absolutely. That's a great note to turn it over to audience for Q&A. So if you have a question, please identify yourself by your name, your affiliation, and please ask a question. I have been known as a moderator to interrupt if people go on a long diatribe. So, okay, yes.
John Dixon,
Sorry, please wait for the microphone.
thank you very much, Rushan, for your courage and determination, and thank you. I'm just curious what resistance you found in the institutions, in Congress or State Department, and also if what's it like at the UN and the Human Rights Council? Any feedback on those dangerous places? Thank you.
Thanks, John. Well, UN, do we want to go there? The UN has been PRC's backyard, basically. They act there like it's some space within China, and under their Beijing is controlled. So I don't want to go into that because we are giving up in UN. Not much is happening, and we are getting a lot of disappointment each time when we try to engage. But we still need to continue. We still need to continue work there, get whatever we can. Another frustrating thing for me is I used to hear that a lot in the last few years, but still now, currently, we are seeing that is the CCP's narrative when we approach some of the government entities or even some of the posts, the embassies, or some individuals or institutions. Oh, this is a sensitive issue for China. Of course, Chinese government wants to keep it sensitive. So saying the Uyghur issue is a sensitive issue, that actually, it just makes us very upset and frustrated. And another frustration with us was it's like 40 years of naivety is not enough. Continuously having trade and the collaboration and the dialogue with China, it doesn't go anywhere because the CCP will never keep their words, never do what they promised that they will do, and they will never say what they actually do. So it's time for us to recognize CCP and the Chinese authoritarian government as a barbaric terrorist regime, actually terrifying all the individuals and the conducting crimes against humanity. So yeah, hopefully we will have that support from every place that we go without worrying for making CCP upset, making Beijing upset.
And Rushan's point underscores, like, we do need to compete. We need to show up and compete for influence. We need to understand that if you're actually in complicated negotiations, grab issues like this for leverage. If you want leverage, you've got leverage. And finally, I think to also help pierce the hypocrisy of the storytelling of what the CCP represents globally, people need to understand that hypocrisy.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Emily Hauscher, and I was wondering what are some good policy proposals that we in the United States, along with our allies of the European Union, could do to confront the CCP and bring attention to the Uyghur genocide? And are there anything that the Uyghurs are doing with other dissidents and groups in autocratic regimes, such as collaboration between Uyghurs in Tibet and Ukraine and all the countries confronting the alliance of autocracy? I can't wait to read your book. Thank you.
Yes, actually, for the legislations, we did successfully pass 2 legislations, and the most important one is Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which was led and introduced and passed by Secretary Rubio. Now he's at State Department trying to implement that, and he's being sanctioned because of that, actually. The genocide of the Uyghurs currently, because of all these companies continuously using Uyghur slaves for their supply chains, making this genocide a profitable venture for the CCP. So that actually the most important legislation that we are implementing in the US, and we need to see our allies in the world also pass similar strong legislation, specifically address the Uyghur forced labor. And we are trying to work on that, and having some luck in some parts, just bringing a little bit here and there for the, like import ban, but it's not as strong as the one we have in the US. And even the one we have in the US has loopholes, so we need to address those. There are a few bills at the Hill right now we are working on, like Representative Young Kim mentioned, and there's another one introduced by Congressman Sohas. They both are very important, and recently, actually, Congressman Chris Smith also introduced the genocide and the organ harvesting, forced organ harvesting bill. That's also very important because the Chinese government is not just forcing the Uyghurs to, forced sterilizing and the forced abortions and taking the kids away and all that, but they are using every part of the Uyghur bodies. Since they have in our DNA samples and the health records, they are using the Uyghurs and the Falun Gongs and many others for forced labor, forced organ harvesting. Working with allies, yes, absolutely. We have very close allyship with the people from all, the subject to authoritarian regimes, like from Korean dissidents to Ukrainian activists, Russian dissidents. And in my book, actually, I have messages, blurbs from Gary Kasparov and the wonderful Evgenia Karamuza, and just the many allies that we have, of course, with His Holiness Dalai Lama and the other Chinese dissidents like Gordon Chang, Feng Shuso, and our Tungan activist Ma Zhu. So we are very lucky to have those supports and understanding, but because of those dictatorships, they stick together, they work together, they share their playbooks, and they do same thing. So we are only strong when we also stick together. When we shout together with same voice, our voice will be louder.
Eamon, did you want to add anything?
That's perfect.
That was pretty comprehensive there, Rushan. Thank you. I think I saw, Elfidar, that you had your hand up. You're in the pink.
Alfidar Iltipir from Uyghur American Association, and thank you so much for this event, and congratulations. My question is, as you know, Chinese government's transnational repression has been succeeding because we had many Uyghur human rights activists and advocates used to be with us, and they're silenced today. Our numbers are decreasing day by day. And we know the Chinese government hold our family members, loved ones held hostage in our homeland and trying to control our activities here, and that's how the numbers are decreasing. My question is, how can we inspire those silenced people? How can we encourage them? Like basically they're the broken ones, right? How can we make them unbroken? Thank you.
Well, first of all, transnational repression should be recognized by the governments and the Western democratic countries as crimes, international crimes against humanity, because it is a crime, what China is doing. And how do we inspire those people? Well, to me, many people ask me actually if I feel guilty because of my activism. My sister is in jail. Or how do I continue, like what Olivia asked, with all these years, she's still in jail, the situation is not being changed. I do believe in doing everything I can and keep moving forward, then we will make a difference. And like the introduction starts with a little like children's storybook, Choo Choo the Tank Engine, I think I can, I think I can. We need to combine our efforts and lead with those people, keep working with them, and let them realize that maybe we take small steps, but we are moving toward justice. And this is going to make a huge difference for all of us, not just our parents calling us up or our family members being coerced or scared by the Chinese government or police influencing them and pressuring them to make phone calls and asking us to stay quiet, don't join the events or don't participate in any protests. Yes, we can think about them right now, but we also need to think about this country, this world that we are living on. If we keep giving in, then we are handing a victory to the CCP. It's difficult to address that question. It's a great question, but thank you. And that's something that we need to continuously work on as global organizations.
I would just briefly add, first of all, thank you for your leadership. But it's partly why I said, at first when we saw these issues treated as just a simple law enforcement issue, it's a harassment, intimidation. It doesn't merit a lot of law enforcement assets when it's seen through a narrow prism. And so part of this was really important to reframe. This is a national security issue. And if you understand the strategic effect of the coercion and the intimidation, it's actually far more significant than you might do if you were just looking through a narrow law enforcement mechanism. So raising the penalties, the costs associated with this type of harassment, understanding the strategic effect is a whole paradigm shift where I think we've seen in our country, the FBI move over years and trying and making that transition. There's some legal underpinnings where we could bolster that more. Second, so that means providing the resources to support those who are targeted so that they've got better support, whether it's their own security practices, other ways to protect themselves, as well as being able to demonstrate a record of actually going after, not just tolerating it, but documenting it, exposing it, beginning to prosecute it, expelling some of those responsible for it, taking action on that. And that's where I think there's an awareness. We still have a huge number of countries that have extradition treaties with the CCP, for example. And some of these reports that others, you talked about the cooperation between Chinese dissidents, Uyghurs, Tibetans, Hong Kongers. Some of these reports have helped people understand, okay, it's not such a good thing, this extradition treaty that's being used to target Uyghurs to send them back to China, for example. And so I think using some of those mechanisms to break apart sort of the instruments through which the CCP achieves successful execution of its transnational oppression needs to be part of the playbook as well.
That's really excellent. We are unfortunately out of time for our panel, but I wanted to make a few notes before we thank our speakers. Number one, food is available. Lunch will be served. Thank you to Campaign for Uyghurs for providing Uyghur food.
Oh, wonderful.
So this is very exciting.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love it.
But also, when you exit out of here, the books will be available for purchase. And I think Rushan maybe can sign some of them too, if that's of interest.
The first contribution is to buy a book to support the cause.
Buy the book. But finally, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us here. I know there are many brave people who are in the audience who are doing advocacy in their own spheres, and we are so grateful for your leadership and for raising your voices and looking forward to coming alongside of you in those endeavors as well. But before we close, would you please join me in congratulating Rushan and thanking David?